Now that fall is here, I am super excited for all of the wonderful baked goods and desserts that come with it. There is just something about those cozy fall flavors and the warm spices that just brings fall into being, and it is one of the things that I look forward to every year, is the fun, wonderful treats that we get this time of year. And with Thanksgiving and Christmas just around the corner, why don't we go ahead and make some amazing fall inspired recipes that are great for Thanksgiving dinner. One is going to be a pie, but we're gonna make it a little bit of a twist. It's not one of the most popular pies to my understanding, but it is a very common one that gets made around Thanksgiving. We are also then going to be making 3 non-pie desserts that are pumpkin inspired. 2 are pumpkin inspired and 1 is apple inspired, and I'm super excited to share those with you. So on our list to bake for these amazing fall inspired desserts are Chewy maple pumpkin cookies. I'm really excited about those. That was actually what's triggered this whole let's make some fall inspired recipes, especially with Thanksgiving just being a few weeks away at the time of me filming this. Hopefully when this comes out, it's still a week away. It gives you time to see if this is something you're interested in. So a chewy maple pumpkin cookie, a pumpkin pecan cobbler, a maple chocolate pecan pie, and a French apple tart. So we are going to be making 2 of these recipes tonight. We're going to be making the chewy pumpkin cookies tonight and the pumpkin cobbler tonight. And then we will make the other 2 recipes here in the next day or 2. I need to slow down a little bit. If you are new here, I am 28 weeks pregnant and I'm officially in the 3rd trimester with our first child. And I have been humbled these last couple of weeks, and I need to definitely start slowing down a little bit more. I was humbled at the beginning of pregnancy to slow down, and I was feeling really good in the 2nd trimester, but we're hitting a point where I need to slow down again. My body is doing a lot of things, and as much as I want to do a whole bunch of other things, we can't. So we're going to be splitting this up across a couple of days so it's manageable for me. I also work full time. So if you are somebody who works full time, don't be discouraged. There is still plenty of time to get these desserts made. And the great thing is the pecan pie you can make ahead of time and you can freeze. The French apple tart you can make ahead and you can freeze. The pumpkin cookies, you can make the dough and freeze the dough. You can portion the dough out and freeze. And I don't know if you can do the cobbler. The cobbler is the only one that I'm unsure if it's something that you can make ahead or not. Some of the recipes said it's great to make ahead. Some recipes were not. So I don't know if the cobbler will make a great make ahead recipe. We'll see as we make it. But 3 of these 4 for sure can be made ahead of time to help ease the stress for Thanksgiving prep. So let's start with our chewy pumpkin cookies because 1, we have to brown the butter and we have to allow it to cool. And then we need to cover the dough and let it chill in the fridge. Oh my goodness. For 8 hours up to overnight. We are not apparently making the chewy maple pumpkin cookies tonight. I should have read the whole recipe. I was just like, these sound amazing and we're gonna do it. I did not realize they needed to chill. The dough needed to chill for that long. So we are gonna get these prepped. We will be making the pumpkin pecan cobbler tonight for sure. And if that's the case, we will go ahead and get the pie dough for the pecan pie and the French apple tart made on up. And we'll get some dough just ready to go in the fridge for when we go ahead and make those 2 later. So let's get cooking. Okay, so I have a small saucepan here and we are going to melt 1 cup of butter and we need to brown it. So the trick here is not to scald it or burn it, but we do want it to get a browning, and this will actually change the flavor of the butter a little bit. I've never browned butter before, so I'm a little nervous, but I think it's gonna be great. I've also put this on my small burner, so that way we aren't just like burning our butter right away. So we'll put it on a low heat. We want this to be a low and slow process. So this is gonna take a little bit of time. We also then are gonna need this to cool for 30 minutes, but we want it to remain liquid before we mix the rest of the ingredients together, which is great because we also need an egg yolk to come to room temperature. So this will work out great. So one of the next things we need to do is we need to measure out half of a cup of pumpkin puree. So growing up, my mom had one of these. It's Pampered Chef. If you are familiar with the brand, you can measure liquids on this side and you can measure solids on this side. We grew up with one of these, and my mom found one at a thrift store, and it's in really good condition. You can still actually read the markings on it, and I was super excited to have it. This is actually my first time using it. I don't actually do a whole lot of baking because I don't need all of these baked goods in our house because I will be the one who eats them all. Reed's not a huge baked goods fan, so I eat it all. He will eat what I make, but it's just, he's not a huge sweets person. But I'm super excited to make this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure out half a cup of this pumpkin. We are gonna set it out on a paper towel and we're gonna blot it a little bit because we wanna remove some of that moisture. The moisture will affect the cookie, so we wanna remove some of the moisture from it. This is already melting really, really nicely. This is what. So I'm gonna go ahead and just scoop. This is pureed pumpkin from pumpkins I roasted and pureed myself. You can use pure canned pumpkin if you have it, but I like using fresh pumpkin. And then I can always freeze whatever we don't use. I'm gonna try and get rid of some of these air bubbles. So we'll go a little bit heavier on the pumpkin, not too crazy. There we go. Perfect. And we'll set this pumpkin aside because we're gonna need it for the cobbler. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay out a paper towel with a napkin, or a plate with a paper towel. We're gonna spread this out just a little bit. We're gonna let this absorb some of the moisture. And the pumpkin, I've done this one other time, the pumpkin will peel away from this. So we'll let this sit here for a minute. As you can see, this absorbed moisture immediately. So we'll let this sit for a second. We also need an egg yolk that's at room temperature. So we're gonna very carefully, if the egg wants to cooperate, try to separate the egg white from the yolk. Let's see, we're gonna set this down. Perfect. Let's see if we can get the yolk back in there. We did. Fantastic. Okay. Now we'll also just set the yolk aside. This egg white will not go to waste. I will use this tomorrow with breakfast or something, but for now I'm gonna put it back in the fridge. And the egg yolk and the pumpkin can just chill right here. So the recipe says once the butter starts to foam, whisk continually until brown bits start to form. Remove from heat and pour into another bowl and allow to cool for 30 minutes at room temperature. This will take about 15 minutes, I believe it said. Yeah. It'll take about 15 minutes for this whole process to take place. And then once we're done making the brown butter, we're gonna wait for this to cool and we'll move on to the cobbler. I just don't wanna burn the butter. All right, so I'm starting to see some brown when I stir really fast in the middle. It's also taking on a toasted flavor, so I'm gonna call this good. I don't wanna overcook this. And so I am thinking that we've got the butter nice and browned, so we're going to transfer it to a bowl. Ooh. Oh yeah, there's definitely brown bits in there. That butter looks nice and golden. And so now we just wait for this to cool down. So let's get working on our cobbler. So first things first, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna chop up our pecans. This is gonna be one of the last, the pecans are going to be part of the last step that we take. However, I want them chopped so that way we are just ready to finish assembling this cobbler. It doesn't say how chopped these need to be. So we're just gonna make sure we don't have ginormous chunks is what we're striving for right here. There we go. I see a big chunk. So while we're waiting until we get to this point, we're just going to go ahead and transfer the pecans into this dish. And that's about a quarter cup. And now we'll set this aside till we're ready. Next thing we need to do is go ahead in a medium bowl. We're going to go ahead and mix together all of our dry ingredients, which is our flour, our baking powder, our salt, oh, and sugar. Sugar is usually considered a wet ingredient if you don't know. But this says to go ahead and add the sugar and the spices into the big bowl. So let's do that. We need 1 cup and 3 tablespoons of flour. So this is a half scoop, so there's half cup. There's another half a cup. Let me get my tablespoon measure out because I did not grab that. And 1, 2, and 3. Next thing is our baking powder. We need 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and this is a half scoop measure. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. We need half a teaspoon of salt. We need 3/4 cup of sugar. That's a 1/4 cup scoop. This calls for 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Again, this is a half scoop or a half teaspoon measure. We need half a teaspoon of nutmeg and half a teaspoon of cloves. Now we set that aside. Now we do our wet ingredients. So we need half a cup of pumpkin. We're going to use our pureed pumpkin here. We're going to use our measuring tool. Set it to half a cup. This does not say the pumpkin needed to be blotted, so we will not be blotting it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add that. We'll set that aside. We need to now add our melted butter. We got a 1/4 cup of milk and our vanilla. This is homemade vanilla. It calls for 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. We're just gonna kind of measure with our heart here. Perfect. We'll give this a mix. Okay. Right, now the recipe says to go ahead and combine the two until we get a thick batter. We also have the oven preheating to 350 degrees. I don't think I told you that. Now we mix all of this together to get a nice thick batter. We also need to go ahead and get our kettle on to get some extremely hot water, because this recipe says that we're going to pour boiling hot water over this batter here in a minute. And I would definitely agree this is nice and thick. Let me just make sure we're getting it mixed evenly. So let's get all the wet ingredients separated from the spoon. Fantastic. I'd say that's nicely mixed. Let's go get our water. Let me go get that water on to boil, and then we'll mix up our topping. And now in a separate bowl, it says to go ahead and mix sugar, brown sugar, and our pecans. So there's our 1/4 cup of chopped pecans. We need a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. So there's 1, 2, and now we need another 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Get our clay out of the, so here's 1, 2. So let's mix this together real quick. We've got our hot water almost ready to go. We've got our oven almost ready to go. Mix up this brown sugar. Maybe I should have gotten a bigger bowl. I underestimated this. That's fine. The recipe said to go ahead and add the batter to an 8-inch casserole dish with high sides. The only 8-inch casserole dish I have is more square, and this just doesn't look like it's gonna fill a square very well. I don't think this is gonna rise a lot. It does have some baking powder in it, but what I think we're gonna do is we're just gonna use this loaf pan. This loaf pan seems like the right idea. So that's what we're going with. So let's see how this works out. We're gonna go ahead and get everything off of this spoon. We're gonna set the spoon aside. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add this batter into this pan. And that should allow it to rise enough. Yeah, that should be good. I even think this might have been too big. I've never made a cobbler before, friends, so you guys need to tell me, does this need to go in a smaller dish, or is this big enough? Because I made a corn souffle, and the dish I made it in was definitely too big. I did half the recipe, so it wasn't very souffle-like. in terms because of the dish that I made. So we'll just, I'm trying to spread this evenly. So we'll start there. Make sure we get all of this. Perfect. We are gonna add the topping. Over this dish. It's a lot. Holy buckets. That's like pure sugar right here. Okay, it says to distribute evenly. And this is the weird part. This recipe said to pour without stirring a thing. That's in big letters. Pour hot water over the entire thing and then we bake. Okay, and now we toss this in the oven. Oh, no. I totally forgot to put this in here. Okay, let's get that out of here. And now we add this. There we go. And now we're gonna let this cobbler bake for 40 minutes. All right, sweet. Well, that recipe's done. So while we're waiting on that to cook, we're still waiting on the brown butter to cool. Let's kind of clean up our mess a little bit. Make sure all of our ingredients are together for the chewy maple pumpkin cookies. And then let's make some pie crusts. Maybe. I don't think I have butter. We'll be making those in the morning, actually. All right, friends, we have good news. 1, the brown butter is decently cool. 2, I pulled out plenty of butter. I just put it in a spot that wasn't obvious. So we will be making the pie crust. I cleaned up my mess. I got our 2 bowls cleaned because we're gonna need these again. We need to do separate wet and dry ingredients and then we'll combine everything. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and add the browned butter to this large bowl. I'm gonna take its temperature, make sure it's not hot. It says to make sure it is nice and cool and this bowl is cool. So that should help the butter out quite a bit. Finish the cooling down process. And then we can start mixing everything together. I do believe I pulled out all my ingredients, but let me double check. We've got the maple syrup. Oh, I need my pumpkin spice blend. Pumpkin spice blend. This recipe calls for baking soda, not baking powder. I did just recently replace our baking soda. We need salt. That's here. We've got the butter. We need brown sugar. I've got the maple syrup out. We've got the egg yolk. We've got the pumpkin. We have vanilla. And this says maple extract. I didn't buy any. It is an optional additive since we are using maple syrup. So I will not be using the maple extract, but if you wanted to add that here, you could. It calls for half a teaspoon. And then there's a spiced sugar, and it looks like we may roll the cookies in it. But we won't need that until tomorrow when we go to bake these because we're going to roll the cookies in them before we bake them in the oven. But because this dough has to chill overnight, we won't be doing that right now. So let's go ahead and mix the dry ingredients into this small bowl. So it calls for 2 1/4 cups of flour. Let's see. So here we're going to do another half cup measure. There's 1 cup, 1 1/2, 2, and 1/4 cup. We need 2 teaspoons of the pumpkin spice. This is a half scoop measure. Half a teaspoon of baking soda. Oops. We need half a teaspoon of salt. goodness. Okay. So we're going to mix these together till they're well combined. We're going to add our browned butter to this bowl. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure, ooh yeah, there were lots of browned bits there. I'm using this spatula because I want to make sure we get all of this buttery goodness, as much of it out of this bowl as possible. Okay. We'll set this aside because I'll use this spatula to get everything into a bowl. Okay, so now we do the brown butter, brown sugar, and maple syrup. I need a cup of brown sugar. So there's half a cup. So 1/3 a cup of maple syrup. This is the same cup we used earlier. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay. Good, good. Go ahead and add the maple syrup. This is the same whisk I used for the browned butter, so we'll just use it again to mix all of this together. It says to mix until well combined. This is starting to look pretty well combined to me. There we go. Perfect. Let's add our room temperature egg yolk. Now we can add our pumpkin. So see, the pumpkin will just peel right off. Oop. There we go. And our vanilla. This calls for 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Again, we're just going to kind of measure with our heart here. We'll mix this on up really well. And now we stir in the dry ingredients until everything becomes just combined, and then we're going to set this in the fridge to chill. Let me get the rest of these ingredients out. Okay, that is just combined. I don't see any more flour. Get all this goodness off the spoon. There we go. Now we're going to put some plastic wrap over this, and into the fridge this goes. And I will see you tomorrow when we bake these up. I will also, we're gonna taste that pumpkin cobbler together, but we will finish these up tomorrow. I'm making a double batch of Becky at Acre Homestead's pie crust, which means I need 5 cups of flour. I think I can fit it all in here. We are about to find out. This is very, very cold butter. So the apple tart came with a pie crust recipe, but I'm thinking I'll do this so that way I can, because Becky at Acre Homestead's pie crust recipe makes 2, so like a top and a bottom if you were making a pie like that. It's not the kind of pies we're making, so I will get 4 pie crusts here. I'm just going to chop this all into some chunks, and the food processor will take care of the rest for us. Whew. Yeah, we are pushing some limits here. Okay, so that'll get the butter nice and small. We'll just go ahead and press the rest of this together with the liquid. We'll set this into the fridge so it has time to chill again. I want this butter to stay super, super cold. So the cobbler said to bake for 40 minutes or until the center is set. The center is not set and there's still about a minute left in the cooking process. So I think we're gonna let this go at least another 5 minutes. Let's give this a jiggle real quick though. Oh, it could be set, it just sank. I don't know what that means. Well, maybe it is done. Just looked it up, friends, and it said that if the toothpick comes out clean, it's fine. It just didn't rise in the middle. And that could be for various reasons, but our cobbler is done. And it says to let this sit and cool for like 10 to 15 minutes before serving. So we're gonna let this sit here and we're gonna finish our pie crusts. Transfer this into a bigger bowl. Let's see. I'm gonna make sure we get all this butter in here. We don't want the butter to go to waste at all. The butter is incredibly important in a pie crust. We'll try and get all the flour out. We need 4 tablespoons of sugar. That's 2 tablespoons per crust. We need 1 teaspoon of salt per recipe, and this is, oh, apparently this is the 1/4 teaspoon. 3, 4, 6. We'll get a fork real quick to mix all of this up. Yeah, we got some perfectly sized butter pieces in here, which is great. And we need in total about a cup of water, and this is about 1 1/4 cups, so we'll and I've got super cold water here. So we'll add about 1/2 cup of water at first. Add some more. We'll add the rest. We really don't want to melt this butter too much, but what I'm going to try and see is if we can get this dough to stick together. While trying not to make a ginormous mess. The thing with dough is you want to use as little moisture as possible. However, looks like we need more water. So see how this dough right here is starting to stick together? The rest of these pieces aren't. I also probably should have made one recipe at a time. Hopefully next time I remember this. Okay. And I don't want to overwork this. Again, I'm trying not to melt the butter. I think we found it. I'm not kneading, I'm like pressing the dough together. Nice and compact here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to divide this in half. We're just gonna eyeball it. Okay. So here is for 1 recipe's worth of pie crust, which the recipe we are following is in fact a double batch, or it's 2 pie crusts worth. Set that aside. Again, there's another. Okay, in each of these, this is 2 pie crusts, this is 2 pie crusts. Now these can go in the fridge. The pie crusts are made and they are in the fridge so they can chill and the butter stays nice and cold. We've got the chewy pumpkin maple pecan, no, chewy maple pumpkin cookies. The dough is chilling in the fridge. We have our pecan pumpkin cobbler that is ready to go as well, which is super exciting. We're gonna give this a taste test together, and the recipe did say pair it with some vanilla ice cream, which is what we're gonna be doing. What's the best way to get this out of here? Let's see, let's just do nice little, ooh, it's got a nice little crust on it. Ooh. It's got an awesome caramel sauce. Oh, friends. This looks amazing. Holy smokes. First things first, let's just give the cobbler a bite with some of the sauce. That is so good. It was so easy. That recipe, I was really intimidated. This was one of the recipes I was actually really intimidated over. Oh, that crumbly top, it's got a beautiful like hard crust on top. That's awesome. And then when we poured the water over the brown sugar, the regular sugar, the stuff that was on top crusted over. And then it made an awesome caramel sauce. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to open up the vanilla here. Now obviously we need just a scoop. We don't need anything crazy here. Perfect. Maybe just a smidge more. That's so good. It's just, honestly, it didn't need the vanilla ice cream. But this is amazing. Okay, well, I'm gonna go enjoy. I will see you all probably tomorrow because we have to bake those cookies. And we'll make the rest of these desserts. That's so good. All right, friends. So it's the next morning. I've been fed, I'm caffeinated, I'm hydrated. Let's get these recipes finished on up. So what we're gonna start out with is the French apple tart. We need to core and peel 3 apples. We're gonna get them mixed on up with sugar, vanilla, cinnamon, melted butter, and some salt. Once we get those mixed on up, we're gonna get the pie crust for the apple tart rolled out. We're going to fill it with apples, and then we're gonna fold the edges on itself. And then this recipe says to put it back in the fridge and let it chill before we put it in the oven. So that's why we're starting with this recipe first. The pecan pie, the crust also needs to bake. We need to do a blind bake on the pecan pie crust. Ooh, maybe we should do that first. Get that baking while we're coring the apples. And then we can move on to that. And then our cookies will probably be the last thing that we get put into the oven. We shall see. Okay, yeah, so let's put this on pause real quick. Let's get the crust for the pecan pie rolled out, put into the pie pan, blind baking for 18 to 20 minutes. And while it's baking, we'll get the apple tart prepped. Okay, change of plans. We're trying to be as efficient as possible. I really don't want to be in the kitchen all day today. So we shall see how this goes. So we're going to preheat the oven to 375. Now let's get our pie plate out. So we have a pie plate here. We're gonna just put our apples in this bowl. We'll set this aside. I had my compost bin out because of the peels and the cores, so we're also gonna get that out of the way. Coffee. So remember the pie crust recipe we made last night? It makes 2 pie crusts. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this in half, and one of these will be used for the apple tart, and one will be used for the pecan pie, because this is the one that lifted away. Let's see, which one looks a little bigger? This one does look a little bigger. We'll use this one for the pecan pie. We'll use this one for the tart. We're gonna get this wrapped back up, and we're gonna put it back in the fridge. We want the butter to stay very, very cold. Oh yeah. This is a good... Get out our rolling pin. I'm going to try and keep flipping this because I don't want the dough to stick to the countertop. So if you keep rotating, it'll help. And there's a lot of beautiful flakes of butter in here, which is fantastic. Just sprinkle a little bit more flour here. Let's see. Perfect. We're going to lay this into our pie plate. I'm gonna go ahead and we're just gonna crimp all around. I've got a knife here because we'll go ahead and we'll I'm just kind of pinching the dough, pushing it together. Nothing too special here. It's probably one of the prettiest pie crusts edges I've ever done, if I'm honest. There we go. And now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut along the edge of the pie plate to get off all of this excess. Get it off the handle here. Perfect. And this dough, I'm not going to let go to waste. It is I'm just going to throw this back in the fridge. Recipe said for blind baking to go ahead you can add pie weights. Yes. It says to add pie weights, and I don't have pie weights, number one. They say you can use beans. I really don't want to bake my beans because I don't want to waste them. I don't know if they'll be usable after that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to just poke some holes in this crust. We're going to bake this for about 18 minutes. Now that we've got that crust in the oven, we're going to go ahead and peel these apples. I do have an apple peeler. I currently can't find it, so we're just going to peel these by hand. Thankfully, it's only 3 apples, so it won't take much. our apples, we need to add 1/3 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, about 1/8 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Now we mix this on up. Perfect. So now we're gonna put these apples in the fridge so they stay nice and cool. And we're gonna see if we can fix the pecan pie crust situation. So I'm gonna look up some instructions for blind baking pie crust. So let's get the apple tart finished up. You know what, we can use this parchment too. We're gonna get the apple tart finished up so it can be chilling in the fridge for a little bit because it does need to chill in the fridge. And we are just, we'll get the pecan pie situation fixed here in a minute. So this tart, it says we need to roll it out into a big circle-ish. Another way to think of it is kind of like a galette. It's like an open-faced, less structured pie. So it said it needed to be about 14 inches. That's about right. And about 1/8 of an inch thick. It says to sprinkle some flour. And we're just going to fill this with our apples. And it says to leave about 3 inches on the sides. Ish. And apples cook down, so don't worry about how tall this is right now. It's pretty dull though. Okay. What I should have done, it's fine. So we're gonna add the rest of this butter that's sitting in the bottom of this bowl. But what I should have done was lifted this pastry onto this parchment paper before we did this. So we're gonna have to be super careful here. Whew. Yeah, very, very careful. So really quickly, I'm just gonna do this, we're gonna do this, 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 and this, and carefully but quickly lift that onto the parchment paper. we are gonna roll the sides back out like this per the instructions, and we're gonna let this chill. Now let's roll this back out again. One trick that I found online said that we can actually use another pie plate. So I think that's what we're gonna do this time. We'll see how that works. I can tell that's sticking. I've got another piece of parchment paper here. We're gonna lay this dough out on here. We're gonna put this back in the fridge. I want this dough to chill again. And then once it's chilled for about 10 minutes, we'll put it in our pie plate. So the reason I did not put that dough into a pie plate was because one, my oven is already on. If I chill the glass pie plate and then put it into a hot oven, I risk shocking it and shattering the pie plate, and then all of this was for naught. So we are gonna chill it on some parchment paper on a baking sheet. Once it's chilled a little bit, we'll put it back, we'll put it into a new pie plate, we'll set another pie plate on top of that, and hopefully that helps. Otherwise, I don't know what else to do. That's so disappointing. Okay, so let's clean up our mess a little bit. And then we can get moving on again. This crust has been chilling for a minute. We're gonna get it plopped into our pie plate. We are gonna push it down. Okay. We are going to crimp it. Okay, and let's see. There we go. Oh, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. It's just not gonna sit. I feel like the crust is still gonna rise on the bottom. That may still get puffy. There we go. We'll do that. We'll do that. Let's see how this bakes up. So let's try this again. Okay, 18 minutes. All right, so this pie crust is, I'm gonna call par cooked. We're starting to get some golden looking edges. We did still have some sinkage. Crust did still sink a little. Let's see if we can, okay, so we got this one out. We'll turn this one upside down because it's got butter and stuff on it. Do that. We will grab the parchment paper out as well. Now we're gonna set this on the side to cool. Yeah, I think that's just, it is what it is. We're gonna drop the temperature of the oven to 350 so we can get the apple tart baking. And we're just gonna let this cool down completely before we make the pecan pie. So our beautiful edges definitely didn't last, but at least the whole crust didn't completely sink. So I'm taking this as a slight win. So even though that crust, it could be better. I've never blind baked a crust before, so this is a lot of learning for me. So just know that if you make mistakes in the kitchen, you make mistakes in the kitchen, and you try again, and eventually one day you'll figure it out. I am one of those people. I've actually never had a lot of difficulty with crust, making like an actual pie crust specifically. So I was bound to struggle with something because you can't have it all. You really can't. So this crust will do. It is not going to win any awards, but it'll do. So we're going to let that completely cool. Let's get our apple tart finished and we can put that in the oven now that the oven is free. So here is our apple tart, and we are going to need an egg. So we're going to crack an egg. We're going to scramble it or beat it. Apparently we were supposed to fold this before we chilled it. That's fine. It will work. And so we just fold the edges like this over the pastry. So we're gonna fold, we're gonna fold, we're gonna try and pinch the edges together so they stay. We do have some of the sugar. I'm just going to crimp the edges together as we fold. Beautiful. This thing is huge. Make sure that these edges stay closed. Now we're going to brush with this egg wash. We're just going to sprinkle some sugar all along the edge here. Now we can pop our tart into the oven. And this needs to bake for 55 to 65 minutes. So it says until the crust is golden and the apples are tender. We have the second pie crust cooling down. The apple tart is cooking, and so we're going to go ahead and get our chewy maple cookies rolled out into dough balls, and then we're going to roll those into a mixture of sugar and pumpkin spice seasoning. And so I'm just kind of eyeballing the size of the dough that I want, and I'm going to roll it in the sugar, and then we're going to place it onto our baking sheet. This dough was really, really stiff. The recipe did say to pull the dough out about 30 minutes before you were ready to use it, and I thought I had it out for long enough. However, it was a really stiff dough. The cookies were absolutely delicious. I think because I had already been trying other things throughout the day, that maybe my taste buds were a little off, because when I tried them the next day I thought they were better, but I do feel like they could have used the optional maple extract, and I think that may have put it over the top. I also think maybe a little bit more pumpkin spice in the cookies could have been added as well, but overall they are a really good cookie. They are soft, they're chewy, and very delicious. So the timer for the cookies just went off. They've been in for 12 minutes. I would like them to cook just a little bit longer. They still look just a touch gooey. They did spread pretty well, so next time I'll try to make sure I'll space them a little more evenly. But let's go ahead and leave them. It says 12 to 15 minutes. We'll leave them in for a couple more minutes. All right. We're calling these cookies done. Learned this trick. There we go. We'll let these sit for a minute and then we'll transfer them onto a cooling rack. Apple tart is done. It looks really good. It smells absolutely fabulous. The crust looks beautiful. And there's an optional apricot glaze that we can make. And I did get myself some apricot fruit spread, so we're gonna make that glaze. That glaze recipe says to combine 1 tablespoon of apricot jelly with 1.5 teaspoons of water. Heat in the microwave until bubbling, about 20 seconds. And then we're gonna use a pastry brush to brush the apples with the apricot syrup. Our tablespoon of jelly, there we go. That seems about a tablespoon. And that can go into the fridge. And we're gonna get 1 teaspoon of water. We're gonna mix this together real quick. We're gonna heat this in the microwave. This did get nice and bubbly in the microwave. Because we don't have a pastry brush, we're just gonna drizzle and spread with the back of this spoon. And we're gonna make it work. There are ways to do things, friends. There's a way to be creative and just to figure it out. So that's what we're doing here. You're just gonna figure it out. We're gonna make it work. Trying to make sure I get this apricot glaze all over the apples, especially the apples that were open air. Cool. The recipe says you can serve this warm. You can also serve this at room temperature. So we're gonna let this cool for a little bit, and then we'll transfer this to a cooling rack to finish cooling the rest of the way. So we got this cooling rack here. I'm just gonna carefully slide it underneath. And now our apple tart is on top of the cooling rack and off of the hot pan. Now we set this aside. The pie crust is almost completely cool. I'm gathering all of the ingredients that we need to finish this maple chocolate pecan pie. So I'm just reading over the ingredients, making sure I have everything out. I'm gonna get our scale out. I need to get our butter out because we're gonna need melted butter. I'm gonna make sure we have all of our scoops. We have scoops. We have scoops in the dishwasher. We got a 1/4 cup. We can do everything with this 1/4 cup. That's good news. Okay. Let me just grab our butter and a bowl to melt all the butter in. So I am gonna give a disclaimer. I'm kind of making this recipe up, because I did find a maple chocolate pecan recipe, actually, but it called for a lot of coconut oil, and I didn't want it to have a prominent coconut oil flavor. Let me see if I can find it real quick so I can look it over. It calls for dark chocolate chips. I don't have dark chocolate chips, but I do have a 60% cacao bittersweet chocolate, and I've got a semi-sweet chocolate. So I may do a quarter and a quarter cup of each, and that should balance out beautifully. And this needs to bake at 375. So we'll heat the oven up to 375. I also just took the last of our cookies out of the oven. They smell really, really good. They're real chewy and soft on the inside. They are really good. The pumpkin is a little more subtle than I expected it to be. So is the maple. But they're delicious. They're really delicious. I expected it's coming through a little bit more. I expected it to be a little more prominent. Yeah. So maybe I would have added the maple extract to these because it is quite subtle. But they are still delicious. I'd also probably add a little more pumpkin spice to them too, to really help bring that pumpkin forward. But overall, they're a delicious cookie. Ghirardelli. Ghirardelli. The lilies and the lilies. There's a Ghirardelli. How many lilies? We've got perfect. So let's go ahead and get this recipe mixed on up. This recipe says not to melt the chocolate. I'm not super sold on that. We're gonna do 2 tablespoons of butter. We are gonna melt this with this chocolate. We're gonna melt it in the microwave. Wow. On like 10-second increments and stir. All right, we got the chocolate started melting. We'll let the residual heat finish melting this on up. It's not 100% melted, and that's okay. So we're gonna set this aside for a moment. We also need 2 whole cups of pecans. So I'm gonna measure out a cup of whole pecans. And then I'm going to lightly chop another cup of pecans. Just because I like the mixture of whole and halved pecans. So that's 1/4 of a cup. And another cup. Next thing we need is 1/3 of a cup of maple syrup. Pour that in here. We'll add our chocolate. Let's grab our spatula so we can go ahead and get all of this chocolatey, buttery goodness out. Need 3 eggs. I don't know if these eggs need to be broken beforehand. It doesn't say, but I'm going to go ahead and break the eggs. These eggs are also at room temperature. Add our vanilla extract. We're gonna add a little bit of sea salt. It says about 1/4 teaspoon. Your pecans. Okay, let's mix this all up. This does not look like it makes a whole lot to fill our pie crust. If I'm completely honest, I'm wondering if we need to double this filling recipe. That just doesn't look like enough. Let's see what my other recipe said, because I was originally going to use a different recipe. That other recipe I was going to use also called for way more pecans. Yeah, we're going to add more pecans, I think. So we added 2 cups. So that's 3 cups of pecans. Get that mixed on in. And we're gonna make a little bit more of this chocolate filling. We are winging it, y'all. So let's go ahead and add 1 more tablespoon of butter. We don't need any more eggs. We're good there. Let's get this melted on up. Okay, so now that we've got this chocolate, we got a little bit of chunks left. We're gonna let that continue to melt with the residual heat. I don't wanna scorch this chocolate. We're also gonna measure out some more maple syrup. So I did 1/3 cup. Let's do another 1/3. Okay, well, think I have another thing of maple syrup here. So we just went through all that. Just need a little bit more. And the recipe I'm currently referencing for using maple syrup, it says to actually go ahead and add some flour to help the maple syrup set better. So I did just go ahead and add a tablespoon of flour. I will write up what I just did because it's kind of a chaotic show over here now. Here's the rest of our chocolate. Okay. Now let's mix this on up. That looks a little bit better. Like it'll actually fill. Let's add a little more pecan. Not a lot more. There we go. So that last bit of pecan should put us at 3 1/4 cup of pecans in here. And add this filling. Perfect. Looks pretty good. Which is exciting. Okay. Into the oven this goes, and this is going to bake for about 40 minutes. So for the pecan pie, I will write up what I did because I kind of did this weird hodgepodge of 2 recipes. And we'll see if it works. I'm excited to taste it. Because I used maple syrup, I don't know how sweet it's going to be. Because one recipe also called for us to add brown sugar. We didn't do that. I don't know if we should have. But we definitely didn't. And then we have committed now, so maybe it's not going to be as sweet. So we shall see. We shall see how good it is. Alright friends, the pecan pie is done. It smells amazing. Let's take a look real quick. The internal temp needs to be at about 190. Yeah, we're good. It looks like it's setting up really good. Out as well. It doesn't need to be in there. Turn that off. You can turn that off. Yep, the internal temp needed to be 195 to 200. It also doesn't jiggle anymore. And it springs back. And it springs back for us. I did have to put foil on the crust to make sure we didn't burn it. But this looks amazing. So now we're gonna let this completely cool down. We have tried the cookies, we have tried the cobbler. The apple tart is technically ready for us to try as well. It's cooled down. I'm not ready to give it a taste test just yet. I will here in a few, and so we'll give that a taste test, and then we will try this pecan pie, and hopefully it's a hit. All right, friends, so these are our 4 desserts that are in the running for Thanksgiving. We have our maple pumpkin cookies. We've got our maple chocolate pecan pie, our French apple tart, and our a little sad looking but very delicious pumpkin pecan cobbler. And that caramel right there is amazing. So now, sorry for the sirens. Now let's give everything a taste test. So last night we gave the pumpkin pecan cobbler a try, and that was amazing. The apple tart is completely cool. I really don't want a huge piece. So I'll just cut up a little tiny piece. And the recipe did say that this would pair really well with some vanilla ice cream. I'm not getting vanilla ice cream out right now, but I do need a fork. So let's give this apple tart a try. The apples are perfect, in my opinion. The flavor on this is perfect. It's like applesauce, apple pie. That's just so good. And the crust is beautifully flaky. This is delicious. And so if you don't want to go through the effort of making a pecan, or I'm thinking of our pecan pie. If you don't want to go through the effort of making like a really elaborate apple pie, this is a great alternative. And a great thing about this is you can make this as big or as small as you want. So I could have cut this dough further in half and made 2 smaller ones, because not everybody in my family is a huge like apple pie type person. It's good and I really like it, but if they're not, you can make a smaller portion. You can also freeze this ahead of time. You can prep this ahead of time, which is also why this is a great option for your one of your Thanksgiving desserts. This is delicious. Yeah. That apricot jelly, you just get a little bit of it. It's not super overpowering. It's not very strong. It just adds a little something something. So this is delicious. And we're still waiting on the pecan pie to finish cooling. Once the pecan pie has cooled more so, we will also give that a taste test. We'll probably do that after dinner though. All right, we just finished dinner, so we're gonna give this pecan pie a taste test. It's good. The maple syrup's not overpowering. I wasn't sure if the maple would really like shine through. It's the chocolate. No, this is really good. This is great. Let me go have Reed take a bite. I'll be back. All right, so Reed said that this is delicious. It's really good. I like it. It's very chocolatey for winging it. So I'll have this written up for you all because we sure did wing it. We kind of followed 2 different recipes. But I think it's great. So I'm really curious to know, that first recipe I was following, it just didn't make a lot. So I'm wondering if I added just a little bit more maple syrup. I don't know. But I think this turned out fabulous. So now I'm really curious to know what my family thinks because I'm going to make this for Thanksgiving. So I'm very curious to know what their opinion is. But hopefully you give one of these sides a try, or wow. Hopefully you give one of these desserts a shot if you're looking for something fun, still festive, but a little bit less traditional. But I think all of these were fantastic. My least favorite, I'm going to say, was the cookies. The cookies were just a cookie. I was really hoping that maple and the pumpkin would shine through, and to me they didn't. And so that was really disappointing. The maple, or the pumpkin pecan cobbler though, I think is my absolute favorite of all the desserts I made. The apple tart was fabulous. This chocolate pecan pie is fabulous. The cookies would be last if I was to rate everything. But I'm wondering if I added the maple extract, if that would put those cookies over the top. So I may try making them one more time. But that's my lesson learned. So happy Thanksgiving to you all. Hopefully you enjoy time with friends, family, and loved ones. I'll see you all next time. Bye.